I still remember the exact moment my life changed. It wasn't the day we lost our house. It wasn't the day my father cried in front of me for the first time. It was the night of my cousin's wedding. The night they laughed at me. That night, I stood in a borrowed suit that didn't even fit properly. The sleeves were short, the collar was tight, and the shoes I was wearing belonged to my neighbor. I kept telling myself, it's just one evening. Smile, stay quiet. But I didn't know that one evening would burn inside me for 5 years. I was born into a middle-class family that slowly fell apart financially. My father once owned a small shop in the market. We weren't rich, but we had dignity. Then debts came. A failed partnership destroyed everything. Within 2 years, we sold the shop, then the motorcycle, and finally moved into a small rented portion at the edge of the city. Relatives changed after that. The same uncles who once praised my father stopped visiting. The same aunties who used to call my mother for advice suddenly became too busy. Poverty doesn't just empty your pockets, it empties people around you. My cousin, Hamza, was the opposite of me. His father had a successful construction business. Big house, big cars, expensive lifestyle. Ever since childhood, family gatherings felt like a silent comparison between us. Look at Hamza's results. Look at the way he dresses. Why can't you be more like him? I stayed quiet. When Hamza's wedding invitation came, my mother insisted we attend. "They are family," she said softly, "no matter what." I didn't want to go. I knew how these gatherings felt, the whispers, the looks, the subtle insults wrapped in fake smiles. But I went. The wedding hall was glowing with golden lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Waiters in uniforms moved around like it was some royal event. For a moment, I felt out of place even before stepping inside. As soon as we entered, I noticed the eyes. Scanning, judging. One of my distant relatives looked at my suit and smirked. I ignored it. I went to congratulate Hamza. He hugged me, but there was something different in his tone. "Glad you made it. Did you come straight from work?" A few guys around him laughed quietly. I forced a smile. Yeah. Then it happened. Later that night, during dinner, a group of relatives sat around one table. I was there too. The conversation shifted to careers and income. One uncle asked loudly, "So what are you doing these days?" "I'm working at a small warehouse," I replied calmly. He raised his eyebrows. "Warehouse? Loading and unloading?" Before I could respond, another voice cut in. "At least he's working," someone said in a sarcastic tone. Then came the line I will never forget. Hamza's father laughed and said, "Some people are born to work under others. Not everyone is meant to sit on the stage." The table burst in laughter. My chest felt tight. I looked around. No one defended me. No one said it was wrong. And then the final blow. One aunt leaned forward and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Poor boy. He shouldn't even think about marrying into a good family. He needs to fix his status first." More laughter. In that moment, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I looked at my mother. She heard everything. She kept her head down and pretended to adjust her dupatta, but I saw her eyes. She was holding back tears. That was the moment something changed inside me. Not anger, not hatred, a decision. I didn't create a scene. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I stood up quietly and walked outside the hall. The music was loud inside, but outside it was silent. I stood near the parking lot, staring at the expensive cars. I whispered to myself, 5 years. I don't know why I said 5 years, but I did. 5 years. I will come back. That night, when we reached home, my mother apologized to me. "I'm sorry you had to hear that," she said. I smiled and told her it was okay, but it wasn't okay. That humiliation became fuel. The next morning, I went to work at the warehouse like usual. Heavy boxes, long hours, low salary. But something was different. Every insult replayed in my head while I worked. Born to work under others, fix your status first, not meant to sit on the stage. Instead of breaking me, those words built something dangerous inside me. Discipline. I started saving every single rupee I could. No unnecessary spending, no new clothes, no outings. At night, instead of scrolling on my phone, I started learning. Free videos, business documentaries, English improvement, marketing basics, sales psychology. I didn't tell anyone. During lunch breaks, while others rested, I read, I listened, I observed. Within 6 months, I realized something important. Working hard wasn't enough. I needed a skill. I noticed how many small businesses in our area struggled with online presence. They had products, but no marketing knowledge. So I started learning digital marketing secretly. It wasn't easy. Internet was slow. I didn't have a laptop at first. I practiced on a second-hand computer at a small internet cafe late at night. The owner allowed me to sit after closing time in exchange for helping him clean. People still laughed at me during family gatherings. Still at the warehouse? Yes. I never argued. 1 year passed. I saved enough to buy a used laptop. That laptop felt more powerful than any luxury car I had seen at that wedding. I started offering free marketing help to small shop owners. Most rejected me, some ignored me, a few gave me a chance. I worked for almost nothing in the beginning, but I learned. Slowly, one shop saw better sales, then another. Within 2 years, I left the warehouse job. No dramatic announcement, I just stopped going. I started working full-time from home. Income was still unstable. Some months were good, some months were terrible. There were nights when I questioned myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not meant for more. But then I would remember that table, that laughter, and I would continue. 3 years after the wedding, I had my first major breakthrough. A medium-sized company hired me for a long-term contract. The payment was more than my father ever earned in a month during his best days. When I received that payment, I didn't celebrate. I just sat silently. Because I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't want money just to live comfortably. I wanted transformation. 4 years passed. I built a small team. I registered my own company. We started handling multiple clients. I upgraded my skills constantly. I learned negotiation, branding, investment basics. I stayed invisible. Relatives still thought I was just doing some online work. They had no idea. But deep inside, the clock was ticking. 5 years. And the 5th year was approaching. One evening, my mother came into my room and said something that stopped me. "Hamza's younger brother is getting married next month. We received the invitation." For a moment, everything went silent again. The same family, the same hall, another wedding. I looked at my calendar. Exactly 5 years. I smiled slowly. This time, I wasn't wearing a borrowed suit. And this time, I wasn't going to stand outside in the parking lot. I was going to walk in through the main entrance, but not as the boy they laughed at, as someone they would never laugh at again. And this time, I wasn't coming alone. I was coming prepared. When my mother told me about the wedding, I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. 5 years earlier, I had walked into that hall feeling small. This time, I wasn't just walking in with better clothes or more money. I was walking in with proof. But revenge, at least the kind I wanted, wasn't about shouting or embarrassing anyone. It was about presence. The wedding day arrived. I chose a simple but perfectly tailored black suit. Not flashy, not loud, just clean, sharp, confident. I picked up my parents in a car I had bought 6 months earlier. Not rented, not borrowed. Mine. When we reached the same wedding hall, I paused for a second. Same golden lights, same entrance, same luxury cars. But this time, I stepped out of my own. I opened the door for my mother first. The valet looked at the car, then at me, and nodded respectfully. That small nod felt different. As we walked inside, I could already see familiar faces. Some recognized me immediately, some didn't. One uncle squinted at me for a few seconds and then said, "Wait, is that you?" I smiled. "Yes, uncle." He looked me up and down, confused. "You look different." "I've been working," I replied calmly. We moved further inside. The stage was decorated even more grandly than 5 years ago. Music, lights, cameras everywhere. I could feel eyes on me again, but this time they weren't judging my cheap shoes. They were trying to figure out who I had become. Hamza walked toward me with a surprised expression. "Bro, wow, you look great," he said. "Thank you," I answered. There was an awkward silence between us. He didn't know what to say, because 5 years ago, he was part of that laughter. I congratulated his younger brother and handed over an envelope, not just a symbolic amount, but something meaningful, something that made even the father glance twice at it. Hamza's father approached me slowly. "How are you doing these days?" he asked. "I'm doing well, uncle." "What exactly are you doing now?" "I run a digital marketing company. We handle national and international clients." He blinked. "Company?" "Yes." Before he could respond, one of my old, distant cousins jumped in. "I've heard about his company," he said excitedly. "Isn't yours the one that handled that big real estate campaign last year?" I nodded. Suddenly, the tone of the table shifted. The same type of table, the same type of chairs, but different energy. Someone asked about my office, someone else asked about my income, another asked how I started. I answered politely but briefly. No arrogance, no boasting, because real power doesn't need noise. At one point, the same aunt who had whispered about my status 5 years ago sat beside my mother. "Oh, sister, you never told us your son is doing so well," she said sweetly. My mother just smiled. I watched that from across the hall, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel anger. I felt satisfaction. But the real moment came later that night. Hamza's father invited me to sit at the main table near the stage, the place where important guests sat. 5 years ago, he had said not everyone is meant to sit on the stage. Now he was personally asking me to sit near it. I looked at him for a second, and I accepted. As I sat there, I remembered the parking lot, the borrowed suit, my mother's silent tears, and I realized something. The best revenge isn't hurting someone. It's becoming so successful that their opinion becomes irrelevant. But the story doesn't end there, because life has a strange way of testing you again. A week after the wedding, I received a phone call. It was from Hamza. His voice didn't carry confidence this time. It carried hesitation. "Can we meet?" he asked. We met at a quiet cafe. He looked stressed. "My father's business is struggling," he admitted. "Construction has slowed down. We made some bad investments." I listened quietly. He continued, "We want to expand online. I was thinking maybe you could guide us or partner with us. 5 years ago, I was the boy who wasn't meant to sit on the stage. Now, they wanted a partnership. For a moment, a small voice inside me said, "Say no, let them feel what you felt." But another voice, stronger, calmer, said something different. "This is your real test. Revenge built me, but growth would define me." I leaned back and asked him a simple question. "If we work together, will you treat me like an equal?" He nodded immediately. "Of course." I looked into his eyes and saw something I had never seen before. Respect. Not forced, not fake. Real. I agreed to review their business structure. Over the next few weeks, I studied their company. They had strong offline operations, but zero digital strategy. I proposed a full rebranding plan, online campaigns, and structured investment shifts. It wasn't charity, it was business. We signed a formal contract. This time, I wasn't the boy seeking approval. I was the consultant setting terms. Months passed. The campaigns worked, leads increased, sales stabilized. Their business slowly recovered, and something even more surprising happened. Family gatherings changed. The same relatives who once compared me now asked their children to learn from him. The same aunt who doubted my status told others he was always smart. I didn't correct her, because I knew the truth. They didn't change because they became kinder. They changed because I became stronger. But deep down, the real victory wasn't money. It was my father's expression the day he visited my office. He looked around at the team, the glass doors, the logo on the wall. He placed his hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "You brought our dignity back." That sentence meant more than any income figure. And as for Hamza's family, we never spoke about that wedding night again. We didn't need to, because sometimes silence is louder than confrontation. 5 years ago, I walked out of that hall humiliated. Today, I walk into every room with confidence, not because I hate them, but because I proved them wrong. The strange thing about success is that once you reach a certain level, people stop seeing your struggle and only notice your results. After partnering with Hamza's family business, things changed faster than I expected. Our digital campaigns didn't just stabilize their company, they expanded it. Within a year, their projects were selling before construction even started. Investors returned. Confidence returned. And with every success, my position became stronger. But I stayed careful, because I knew something important. Money can rebuild respect, but it can also expose people's true intentions. One evening, Hamza invited me to dinner at his house, the same house where I once felt invisible. As I walked through the gate, I remembered being a teenager standing outside this place, waiting while others went inside first. This time, a servant opened the door for me. Hamza's father personally welcomed me. "Come, beta," he said warmly. The same man who once laughed at me in front of everyone. We sat in the main living room, expensive sofas, crystal lights. Everything looked the same, but the power balance had shifted. During dinner, the conversation turned serious. Hamza's father cleared his throat. "There's something we want to discuss," he said. I listened. He continued, "You have proven yourself, your vision, your discipline. We respect that. We were thinking, instead of just business partnership, maybe we should strengthen family ties as well." I already knew where this was going. He mentioned his niece, the same side of the family that once said I wasn't fit to marry into a good family. "Now you are more than suitable," he added with a small smile. For a second, everything inside me went quiet. 5 years ago, someone at that wedding table said I shouldn't even think about marrying into a good family. Now the same family was offering. This was the moment, the emotional climax, the type of revenge scene people imagine dramatically. I could have smiled arrogantly. I could have reminded them of their words. I could have rejected them harshly. But I didn't. Instead, I asked for time to think. That night, I drove home slowly. Revenge had fueled my journey, but now I had something bigger: clarity. I asked myself a hard question. Was I building my life to prove them wrong, or to build something meaningful for myself? The next day, I met Hamza privately. "I need to say something honestly," I told him. He nodded. "I don't hold grudges anymore, but I also don't make life decisions based on validation." He looked confused. I continued. "5 years ago, I was humiliated. That pain changed me. It pushed me. And for that, strangely, I'm grateful." He stayed silent. "But I won't marry into a family just because now I'm successful enough for them. If I marry, it will be because of compatibility and respect, not status." He took a deep breath. "I understand," he said quietly, and I think, in that moment, he truly did. A few weeks later, at another family gathering, something unexpected happened. One of the younger cousins, maybe 17 years old, came up to me. "Bai, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you stay strong when everyone doubted you?" That question hit deeper than any insult ever did. Because now I wasn't just the boy who came back successful, I was an example. I told him the truth. I didn't stay strong. I felt humiliated. I felt small. I felt angry. But instead of reacting, I redirected that energy. He listened carefully. "Never chase revenge. Chase growth. Revenge is temporary. Growth changes your entire life." As the years passed, my company expanded beyond what I imagined during those warehouse days. We opened a second office, then a third. I invested wisely: real estate, startups, education. But I never forgot the parking lot outside that wedding hall. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that version of myself, standing alone, wearing borrowed clothes, promising himself 5 years. If I could go back and talk to him, I would say, "Don't be ashamed of where you are. Be focused on where you're going." And the relatives? They don't laugh anymore. Not because they are afraid, but because success rewrites the narrative. The final time I visited that same wedding hall was for a corporate event. My company was sponsoring it. As I walked in through the main entrance, cameras flashing, people greeting me with respect, I didn't feel proud. I felt peaceful, because the boy who once walked out humiliated had finally healed. Not by hurting anyone, not by shouting, but by building something so strong that no insult could shake it. 5 years ago, I whispered, "I will come back." And I did, but not just as a millionaire, as a man who understood that the real revenge isn't destroying others, it's outgrowing them. 5 years. That was the promise I made to myself in a dark parking lot, wearing borrowed shoes, trying to hold back tears. At that time, I thought my goal was simple: come back richer, come back stronger, make them regret laughing at me. And yes, I achieved that. I came back with success. I came back with confidence. I came back with everything they once thought I could never have. But here is the truth no one talks about. The real victory wasn't the car. It wasn't the company. It wasn't the money. The real victory was control. Control over my emotions, control over my reactions, control over my future. If I had reacted that night at the wedding, argued, shouted, insulted them back, I would have stayed small. Instead, I stayed silent,
And silence gave me time. Time gave me discipline. Discipline gave me growth. And growth changed my life. People will always judge you based on your current situation. If you're struggling, they'll call you weak. If you're broke, they'll call you useless. If you fail, they'll call you incapable. But when you rise, those same people will say, "We always believed in you." That's how the world works, and you can't control that. What you can control is your response. I don't hate my relatives anymore. In fact, I'm thankful, because their laughter became my motivation. Their insult became my fuel. Their doubt became my discipline. If that wedding night never happened, maybe I would still be working in that warehouse, accepting average, believing I was meant to stay small. Sometimes humiliation is not an ending, it's a trigger. The boy who walked out of that hall felt broken. The man who walked back in 5 years later felt unstoppable. But not because he wanted revenge, because he built value. And here is the most important lesson of my story. Never try to prove people wrong. Prove yourself right. Don't chase revenge. Chase excellence. Because when you truly level up, you won't need to embarrass anyone. Your success will speak so loudly that their past words will sound like whispers. If you're watching this and you feel underestimated, laughed at, ignored, looked down upon, good. Use it. Let it hurt. Let it burn. But don't let it break you. Make a promise to yourself. Maybe not 5 years, maybe 3, maybe 10, but promise yourself one thing. You will come back stronger. Not to destroy others, but to rebuild yourself. And when that day comes, you won't need revenge anymore, because you'll realize something powerful. The greatest revenge in life is massive, undeniable success combined with inner peace. And that is a comeback no one can ever take away from you.